I was late to meet my rich in-laws because I stopped to fix an old woman's broken car. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone. I never thought a single choice could change the way people looked at me or the way I looked at myself. That morning felt ordinary, almost too calm to hint at what was coming. The sky was pale, the kind that looks undecided between rain and sunshine, and the air had that sweet chill of early spring. I remember glancing at my reflection in the car window before leaving the house, making sure everything was perfect. My hair, my dress, the small diamond earrings I'd borrowed just for this day. It was the first time I was meeting my fiancé's parents, his rich parents. The kind of people who measured respect in punctuality, posture, and pedigree. My heart raced, not from fear, but from the pressure of getting it right. I had rehearsed my smile, my greetings, even the way I'd sip tea if they offered any. Everything had to be flawless. I didn't come from wealth, my family. Worked hard for everything we had, but I wanted them to see me as more than a girl from an ordinary home. The drive was smooth at first. The roads shimmered under soft sunlight, and I kept whispering to myself that this day would mark a new beginning. But then, halfway through a quiet stretch of road, I saw something that made me slow down. An old, faded car stood by the side of the road, its hood open and smoke curling into the air. An elderly woman stood beside it, waving one hand weakly while clutching her purse with the other. I can't explain why I pulled over. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way she looked fragile, lost, like she'd been standing there forever hoping someone would care enough to stop. I remember hearing my fiancé's voice in my head, warning me not to be late, not to make a bad impression. But something about that woman's trembling hands silenced everything else. I parked a few feet away and stepped out. The smell of burned oil filled the air. She looked up, relief flooding her wrinkled face. "Oh, thank God," she whispered, her voice thin but full of gratitude. She said she'd been trying to reach someone for nearly an hour, but her phone had died. I glanced at my watch. 40 minutes left before I was supposed to arrive. I could still make it if I helped quickly. She told me her name was Mrs. Latham. Her husband had passed years ago, and she was on her way to visit her daughter when the car began to smoke. I looked under the hood, pretending I knew more than I did, but honestly, I just wanted to make her feel safe. The radiator hose had burst. Steam hissed softly like the car was sighing in exhaustion. I told her I'd call for roadside help, but there was no signal, not a single bar. The area was quiet, surrounded by open fields and tall trees that seemed to swallow sound. I could feel the tension rise inside me. My mind flicked back and forth between helping her and imagining the look on my fiancé's mother's face when I arrived late. Mrs. Latham looked at me, her eyes glassy. "I'm sorry, dear," she said. "You probably have somewhere important to be." And that's what did it, the way she said it, like she was used to people leaving her behind. Like she'd been an inconvenience her whole life. I couldn't walk away from that. I told her it was fine, that I'd stay until someone came. She smiled, a soft, grateful smile that made my chest ache a little. Minutes turned into 20 and then 30. I found an old water bottle in my car and poured it carefully into her radiator just to cool it down enough for a short drive. She stood beside me, telling stories about her late husband, her daughter, how she used to bake for the church every Sunday. Her voice trembled sometimes, but there was warmth in it too, like she'd seen too much life to be bitter. When we finally got the engine to sputter back to life, her joy was pure. She took my hands in hers and thanked me again and again. "The world needs more girls like you," she said, her eyes glistening. I smiled, but my stomach twisted as I checked the time. I was late. Not just a little over an hour. My hands started shaking as I got back into my car. My fiancé had called 7 times. My chest tightened with every missed call notification. I started driving fast but careful, rehearsing excuses that might sound believable. Traffic, a flat tire, anything but the truth. Halfway there, my phone rang again. His voice was sharp, controlled, but I could hear the anger beneath it. "Where are you, Alec kid? My parents have been waiting. You promised." "I know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Something happened. I'll explain when I get there." He sighed heavily. "You better have a good reason." When I pulled up to the house, it was like stepping into another world. Marble driveway, glass doors, and the kind of silence that made you feel small. My fiancé stood outside, his expression unreadable. Behind him, his mother watched from the doorway, perfectly dressed, her lips pressed into a thin line. I took a deep breath and stepped out, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. He looked at me, eyes flicking to my dusty shoes. The faint grease smudge on my hand. "You look like you've been fixing cars," he said coldly. I opened my mouth to explain, but before I could, his mother turned away with a quiet scoff. "We've been waiting," she said, her tone sharp as glass. "I wanted to speak to tell them about the woman, about how she'd smiled when her car started again. But my throat tightened. They wouldn't understand. Not this kind of kindness. Not the kind that costs you time and reputation." As I stood there, the weight of their silence pressing on me, I felt something shift deep inside. I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something much bigger, a lesson I'd never forget. And if I had known what that small act of kindness would lead to, I might have done everything differently. Or maybe I wouldn't have changed a thing. The silence in that moment was almost unbearable. I could feel their eyes on me, the weight of their disappointment pressing down on my chest like a stone. My fiancé, Daniel, didn't move closer. He just stood there, jaw tight, hands in his pockets, as if trying to decide whether to defend me or distance himself. His mother turned slightly, her pearls glinting against the sunlight, and said in that calm, polished voice that always carried hidden judgment, "We were just about to start without you." I forced a small smile, the kind that barely hides embarrassment. "I'm really sorry," I said softly. "There was an elderly woman, her car broke down on the road. She needed help." For a moment, no one spoke. Daniel's father, a tall man, with sharp eyes, chuckled quietly, not kindly. "You stopped to fix a car?" he said, his tone somewhere between disbelief and amusement. "You, in that dress?" I nodded, heat creeping up my neck. "Yes, sir." I nodded, heat creeping up my neck. "Yes, sir. I couldn't just leave her there." His mother sighed, turning her attention back to the table set inside the patio. "Some people," she murmured, "just don't understand priorities." Daniel finally stepped forward, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "You should have called," he said. "You made me look bad." Those words stung more than I expected. Made him look bad. Not "Are you okay?" Not "That was kind of you." Just his image, his standing in front of them. I swallowed hard and followed him inside. The dining rooms looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, everything perfectly symmetrical. I felt out of place the moment I sat down. My chair creaked slightly, and that small sound somehow felt louder than it should have. His mother smiled tightly. "So, Alec," she began, slicing a piece of roast chicken with precision. "Daniel tells us you work in marketing. Small firm, isn't it?" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am. We're a small team, but we handle a few strong accounts." She arched a brow. "How charming." The word sounded like an insult dressed as a compliment. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that I was here for Daniel, not their approval. Still, every comment that followed was a test questions about my family, my education, even where I bought my dress. Each answer I gave seemed to dig me deeper into the hole of not being enough. And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze for a second, then looked up at me. "Alec," she said, her tone shifting. "Do you drive a white sedan with the license plate ending in 72? My heart skipped. "Yes," I said carefully. She turned the screen around. On it was a local Facebook post. Someone had shared a picture of me and Mrs. Latham by her broken-down car. The caption read, "Young woman stops to help elderly stranger on highway, faith in humanity restored." The photo showed me crouched by the car, my dress smudged, my hair messy, but I was smiling. The room went quiet. Daniel leaned closer to see the screen, his eyes widening slightly. His father let out a low whistle. "Well," he said slowly, "looks like your little detour made it online." I didn't know whether to smile or hide. My stomach twisted again. "I didn't know anyone took that picture," I murmured. His mother stared at me for a long moment before setting her phone down. "Helping strangers is noble, dear," she said. "But sometimes people do these things for attention." Her words hit harder than I expected. My throat tightened. "I didn't do it for attention," I said quietly. She needed help." Daniel reached under the table and touched my hand, a silent plea to let it go. But something in me shifted again, stronger this time. I was tired of pretending, tired of shrinking myself to fit their polished world. After dinner, when everyone stood to leave, Daniel pulled me aside near the garden. The evening air was cooler now, heavy with the scent of roses. "Look," he said, his voice low. "I know my parents can be intense, but you have to understand, they're old-fashioned. They expect a certain image." I crossed my arms. "And helping someone doesn't fit that image?" He exhaled. "It's not that simple, Alikit. They think you should have prioritized meeting them first." I shook my head, disbelief settling in. "So being kind makes me irresponsible now?" He rubbed his forehead, frustrated. "You're twisting this." "No," I said firmly, my voice trembling. "I'm seeing it clearly for the first time." The silence stretched between us, sharp and cold. He looked at me like I was someone he couldn't quite recognize. Maybe, in that moment, I wasn't the girl he thought I was, the one who'd quietly fit into his world without rippling its surface. When I finally left, the sky had gone dark. I sat in my car for a long time before turning the key, staring at the faint grease stain still on my hand. My phone buzzed, again a message notification. It was from an unknown number. "You're the girl who helped me today, right? This is Mrs. Latham's daughter. I just wanted to say thank you. My mother couldn't stop talking about you. She said you were her angel." I stared at the message, tears stinging my eyes. Angel. The word felt strange but warm. For the first time that night, I smiled. Driving home, I passed the same stretch of road where I'd found her earlier. The spot looked different now, quieter, almost sacred. The world was still unfair, still full of people who judged worth by wealth. But for that one moment, I felt at peace. I didn't know it yet, but this story wasn't over. That simple act of kindness, the one that made me late, the one they mocked, was about to turn my life upside down in a way I could never have imagined. I couldn't sleep that night. No matter how many times I turned over or closed my eyes, my mind replayed the day over and over, the old woman's grateful smile, the cold stares from Daniel's parents, the way my heart ached when he said I'd made him look bad. I thought helping someone would make me feel good about myself. But instead it had left me tangled in guilt, anger, and confusion. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains, soft and golden, but it didn't feel warm. My phone buzzed again, dragging me out of bed. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Is this Alec Rose?" a woman's voice asked. Her tone was formal but kind. "Yes, this is she. This is Karen Latham. My mother told me what you did for her yesterday. I just wanted to thank you personally. You have no idea how much it meant to her." I sat up, instantly remembering her mother's soft eyes. "Oh, Mrs. Latham, I'm so glad she's okay. I didn't do much, really. Just helped her get the car started." Karen laughed softly. "That's not what she said. She said you stayed even when you didn't have to, and that you were kind to her. My mother hasn't stopped talking about you since last night." Her words wrapped around me like a gentle hug. After everything that happened, it felt good to hear someone say something kind. Karen continued, Actually, that post of you helping her has gone a bit viral. People are sharing it everywhere. I thought you should know. I froze. Viral? Yes, the photo's been shared thousands of times. Someone even traced it to our local newspaper. They want to interview you. Would you be okay with that? My heart skipped. A part of me panicked at the thought of more attention, especially after how Daniel's family had reacted. But another part, the quiet, brave part, felt proud. Maybe it was time someone saw me for who I really was. Sure, I said slowly. That's fine. When I hung up, I opened Facebook. The post had exploded overnight. There were hundreds of comments. Faith in humanity restored. She's a true example of kindness. The world needs more people like her. I scrolled in disbelief, feeling both flattered and overwhelmed. My phone rang again. This time it was Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but I knew avoiding him would only make things worse. He didn't even say hello. So you're a celebrity now. His tone was sharp. I took a breath. Daniel, I didn't plan any of this. Someone took a picture? That's all. I told you my parents were already skeptical about you, he snapped. Now this? You think they'll take you seriously when you're all over social media like some charity project? His words hit hard, but this time, something inside me didn't break, it hardened. You know what, Daniel? I didn't help her for your parents. I didn't even help her for me. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And if that's something they can't respect, maybe I don't belong in their world. There was silence. Then he said, coldly, maybe you don't. He hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding, my hands trembling, but not from fear anymore. It was something else. Relief, maybe. The kind that hurts before it heals. The next few hours blurred together. The reporter called, and I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown. She was warm and genuine, asking me to describe what happened. I told her everything from seeing the smoke on the road to the way Mrs. Latham's eyes filled with gratitude when the car started again. When the interview went live later that day, the headline read, "Young woman's selfless act inspires thousands." I didn't expect what came next. Messages started flooding my inbox, people from all over the country thanking me, sharing their own stories of kindness. It was surreal. And then came the message that made my hands go cold. It was from Daniel's mother. Ailish, we saw the article. We didn't realize what you did that day. I owe you an apology. I read the message twice, unsure whether to believe it. Part of me wanted to reply with anger to remind her how small she made me feel, but another part whispered that maybe, just maybe, she'd learned something too. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sun dip below the rooftops. The world outside looked ordinary again. Cars passing, children playing, but something inside me had shifted for good. Helping that old woman hadn't just fixed her car, it had fixed something inside me. It made me see how quick people are to judge kindness as weakness, how often we value status over compassion. Just as I was lost in thought, another notification pinged on my phone. It was a news article shared by thousands already. Local woman's act of kindness leads to unexpected chain reaction. I clicked it open. The story wasn't just about me anymore. Apparently, a young man who read my story had stopped to help a stranded mother and her kids earlier that morning. Someone else had donated to a senior center in Mrs. Latham's name. Small acts, one after another, spreading like ripples on water. Tears filled my eyes. Maybe the world wasn't as cold as I thought. Maybe one good choice really could inspire another. I leaned back, breathing deeply, letting that feeling sink in. But even as I smiled, there was a strange pull in my chest, a quiet knowing that this story still wasn't finished. Because sometimes, the moment you think your story has ended, life surprises you with another twist. And deep down, I had a feeling mine was coming soon. For a while, things started to feel peaceful. My story was everywhere. TV, blogs, social media. People I'd never met were calling me the girl with the golden heart. Strangers stopped me in grocery stores just to say thank you. I wasn't used to that kind of attention. It was strange, overwhelming, but also beautiful. Then, about 2 weeks after the article came out, I got a message that changed everything. It was from a man named Ethan Cole. He said he was a producer from a small media company in New York. "Alec," the message read, "your story inspired our team. We're producing a short documentary about modern-day kindness, and we'd love for you to be a part of it." A documentary. About me? I must have read that message 10 times, unsure whether to be thrilled or suspicious. I'd already seen how quickly the internet could twist things. But something about the way he wrote simple, respectful felt genuine. After some thought, I agreed to meet him for coffee at a public place downtown. When I arrived, Ethan stood to greet me. He looked exactly like his profile, photo tall, clean-cut with kind brown eyes. He smiled as I approached. "Alec Rose," he said warmly. "The girl who reminded the world that kindness still exists." I laughed shyly. I think that's giving me too much credit. We sat, talked, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a story someone was using. I felt seen. He asked about my life, my values, even how the backlash with Daniel's family had affected me. I was honest. He listened like every word mattered. By the time the meeting ended, I'd agreed to do the documentary. Something about it felt right, like maybe sharing my story could help someone else find courage to be kind, even when it's hard. The filming started a week later. Ethan and his crew visited my neighborhood, met Mrs. Latham, and captured small moments of my everyday life. The camera felt strange at first, but I eventually got used to it. They filmed me helping at a local food drive, teaching kids at a community center, little things I'd always done quietly, now suddenly seen by the world. But there was something I didn't notice at first. Something hiding behind the praise, the interviews, the bright lights. Someone was watching me. At first, it was small things. My car door left slightly open when I knew I locked it. Footsteps behind me on quiet streets. A strange number calling late at night, then hanging up. I brushed it off, telling myself it was nothing. But one evening, as I left the community center, I saw a dark car parked across the street, the same one I'd noticed 3 times that week. My stomach tightened. The driver's window was tinted. I couldn't see who was inside. I stood still, pretending to check my phone, my heart pounding in my throat. Then the car engine started and it drove off slowly. That night I barely slept. I wanted to tell someone, but who? Daniel and I hadn't spoken in weeks. The thought of calling him felt pathetic. Instead, I told Ethan the next morning. He frowned. "That's serious, Alec. Do you think it's someone who recognized you?" "Maybe," I said quietly. "Or maybe I'm just being paranoid." Ethan leaned forward. "No. You've been in the public eye lately. People can be unpredictable. Let's make sure you're safe, okay?" He arranged for one of his assistants to drive me home after shoots, and for a few days, things were calm again. I almost convinced myself it had just been a coincidence. Until one morning, I found an envelope on my doorstep. No name. No address. Just my first name written in messy handwriting. Inside was a single photo, one that made my blood run cold. It was me. Standing by Mrs. Latham's car the day I helped her. But it wasn't the same photo from social media. This one had been taken from behind the trees, like someone had been watching us. My hands shook as I flipped the picture over. On the back, in the same scrawled handwriting, were 4 words, "You don't know everything." For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. The story that had brought me love, attention, and fame suddenly felt darker, colder. Like there was another side no one had told me about. I didn't know what the message meant or who sent it, but deep down, I knew one thing for sure. The real story had just begun. I couldn't stop staring at that photo. The handwriting, the angle, the meaning behind those 4 words, "You don't know everything." I kept asking myself, what didn't I know? About what? About who? That night, I sat in my living room with the photos spread across the coffee table, my mind racing. The curtains were closed, but I still felt exposed, like eyes were somewhere out there watching me. I tried to calm myself down. reminding myself that fame brings strange people out sometimes. Maybe it was just some online troll trying to scare me. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. In the corner of the photo, almost hidden in the shadows, a hand, a man's hand, gripping the car door. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Mrs. Latham's. My heart dropped. The next morning, I went straight to Ethan's office, clutching the photo like evidence. He looked genuinely concerned when I showed it to him. "This isn't normal, Alec," he said quietly. "We should report this." But something about his tone, the way he said "we," didn't sit right. It was subtle, but it felt rehearsed, like he already knew what to say. I asked, "Do you think it could be someone from your team? Maybe one of the crew members took it?" He hesitated just a fraction of a second before shaking his head. "No, my people wouldn't do that. We'll figure this out." That hesitation haunted me. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus. Every sound outside my window made me flinch. Every shadow on the wall made my chest tighten. I wanted to believe Ethan was right, that I was just overthinking. But that voice inside me, the one that had protected me all my life, kept whispering, "Something's wrong." 3 nights later, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. It came from the kitchen. For a second, I couldn't move. My body froze. I lay there, barely breathing, listening. There it was again. The faint crunch of footsteps. Someone was inside. I reached for my phone, but it wasn't on the nightstand. My pulse pounded in my ears. Slowly, I slid out of bed, moving as quietly as I could. The hallway was dark, the only light spilling from the street outside. I could see the shadow of a figure in the kitchen. Tall, broad shoulders, slow movements. I grabbed the closest thing I could, a lamp, and stepped forward, my hands shaking. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure froze. Then, slowly, he turned. And for a split second, my world stopped. It was Daniel, my ex. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot. He looked broken. "Daniel?" I whispered. "What are you doing here?" He raised his hand slightly. "Alec, wait. Don't freak out. Please, don't freak out." I snapped. "You broke into my house." He took a step closer. I backed away. "I didn't come to hurt you," he said quickly. "I came to warn you." I blinked, confused. "Warn me? About what?" He looked toward the window, as if making sure we were alone. "About Ethan." My stomach turned cold. "What about him?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his voice cracking. "He's not who he says he is. That company, it's not a media group. I did some digging after I saw the documentary announcement. There's no official record of it anywhere. No permits. No production listings. Nothing." I just stared at him, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "That doesn't make sense. I met his team. I saw the cameras." "Fake," Daniel said firmly. "All of it. They're not filming for a documentary, Alec. They're investigating something, and you're at the center of it." I felt my knees weaken. Why would anyone do that? What could they possibly want from me? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This. I found this in an online archive. Look at the name on the case file." I opened it and froze. At the top, in faded typewriter ink, were the words "Latham Family Investigation, closed 1989. My eyes darted to the next line. Primary witness Alice Rose, age 4. I stared at the page, my breath caught in my throat. My name. My old name. My real name. The room started spinning. I looked at Daniel, my voice barely a whisper. "What is this?" He swallowed hard. "Ethan isn't making a documentary, Alec. He's reopening a case. One connected to you and to Mrs. Latham. That old lady you saved, she's not who you think she is." And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about kindness, fame, and fate shattered. I felt the floor tilt beneath me as Daniel said the words that would change everything. "She's the reason your parents disappeared." I couldn't breathe. Those words echoed in my head. "She's the reason your parents disappeared." It felt like the world had tilted on its axis. My childhood memories, my parents' absence, every unanswered question came crashing back at once. Daniel held my hand gently. Alec, I'm telling you this now because you need to know the truth before anyone else twists it. I shook my head, my chest tight. Why would Mrs. Latham do that? He exhaled slowly. It's complicated. The Latham family had secrets involving your parents and some of their business dealings. Your parents stumbled on something they weren't supposed to. Mrs. Latham, she wanted to protect her family at any cost. Tears blurred my vision. So all those years they disappeared because of her? Daniel nodded. Yes, and she's still alive. That's why she was on the road that day. She's trying to, I don't know, make amends? Maybe ease her guilt. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. I had spent my whole life trying to fill the void my parents left, thinking it was just random misfortune. And now, the person I had helped, the woman who seemed frail and harmless, was tied to the darkest chapter of my life. But even as shock and anger swirled inside me, I felt something else. Gratitude. Strange as it seemed, helping her had given me clarity. It had reminded me that compassion isn't about reward. It's about choice. And sometimes, small acts can ripple farther than we ever realize. Daniel spoke softly. Alec, the story you shared, the kindness you showed, it's inspired people. People are doing good because of what you did. It's bigger than any fear, any secret, any danger. I thought about the social media messages, the news articles, the strangers sharing their own acts of kindness. I thought about Mrs. Latham's smile that day, the way her gratitude felt real, even if she had a hidden past. I realized then that truth and justice don't always arrive neatly or immediately. Sometimes they come in pieces through actions, through choices, through courage. And sometimes the impact of one decision can ripple through years and lives in ways we can't predict. I swallowed hard. So, what do I do now about her? About the past? Daniel shook his head. You can't change the past, Alec, but you can control how you respond. You can choose kindness, even knowing the darkness behind it. You can choose to keep being you. I took a deep breath, letting the words settle. For the first time in decades, the weight on my chest felt lighter. Fear, anger, confusion, they were still there, but they no longer ruled me. I understood that my parents' disappearance, Mrs. Latham's past, and even Daniel's frustration weren't the measure of my worth. My choices were. Later that day, I returned to the road where I had first helped her. The car was gone, and the stretch of road seemed empty, calm, and ordinary. But in my mind, the events of the last weeks replayed vividly the fear, the tension, the revelation. I realized something profound. Life isn't about avoiding danger or pain. It's about stepping forward even when the outcome is uncertain. It's about choosing courage and compassion, even when people doubt or misunderstand you. When I finally sat in my car to leave, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Mrs. Latham. Thank you for helping me that day. You reminded me that even broken lives can touch each other with goodness. I hope one day you can forgive me for everything. I stared at the message, my fingers trembling. Forgive her. The word was heavy, but somehow it didn't feel impossible. Because even though she had caused pain, even though she had secrets and guilt, I had the power to choose empathy over revenge. And that's when I understood the real lesson. Life doesn't hand us perfect moments or neat resolutions. It hands us choices. And how we respond, that's what defines us. I sent back a simple reply. Thank you. I hope we can both find peace. As I drove away, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The world looked ordinary again, but I felt extraordinary. I had faced truth, danger, fear, and uncertainty, and I had survived, learned, and grown. That day, I realized that kindness isn't always easy, and courage doesn't always feel heroic. Sometimes it's just standing up when the world expects you to shrink. helping someone when you have every reason not to, and keeping faith in humanity even when it fails you. I thought about the ripple effect, how one choice to stop and help had spiraled into danger, fame, fear, and finally clarity. And I smiled, softly, because for the first time, I knew that even in a world full of secrets, lies, and injustice, one act of courage could shine brighter than any shadow. And I wondered quietly, as the road stretched before me, how many more lives could be touched if we all chose to do the right thing, even when it's hard. That question lingered in my heart, long after the road disappeared behind me. And somehow, I knew my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone brave enough to act with love in a world that often forgets it.